to create, inspire, repeat. I'm Susan Gifford, the Culture and Development Director here at Touchstone Merchandise Group, headquartered in Mason, Ohio.
And I'm Austin Baker, our Multimedia Director. Today we're talking to disruptive visionaries about their brand stories, their inspiration, and their ideas.
That's right. In this podcast, we're talking to people who have created some of the most electric, dynamic, and awesome brands and sharing with you how they got there. We hope you're inspired, activated, and have something to take back to your fellow visionaries to talk with about the water cooler. Maybe start a fire. Right? Get everybody motivated. Exactly. So Austin, tell me, what are the few things on your to-do list that have been there for weeks that you can't just finish?
So I have this video for Andrew. I've been slacking off on it because I'm just not motivated to get it done.
No,
there's something about it and I don't know exactly what it is. And I don't know why I'm not motivated.
Well, what would you rather be doing?
I'd rather be working on photos and taking videos and doing that type of stuff.
And podcasting?
There
we go. Well, shoot. Well, I think we need to talk to Todd Henry from Accidental Creative.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Isn't he like the arms dealer of the creative revolution?
That's what I heard. So Todd Henry has written 5 books. They're all coming from a creative point of view. He's got, for example, Herding Tigers, which talks about managing creatives, among other ones. But the one we really want to find out about today is Motivation Code, which helps you find out what motivates you, your team, your manager, your workplace. And they've even got a way for you to organize it and keep it relevant in your business.
So let's talk to Todd. Hi, Todd. How did the idea of Accidental Creative come about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was leading a team. We were going through these cycles of extreme, exaltation when we did something really well, and then frustration and burnout when we had been working too hard for too long. And so right around 2002, 2003, I started trying to find some answers for how to help the team be what I was calling prolific, brilliant, and healthy all at the same time. So doing a lot of work, doing good work, but also doing it in a sustainable way. And started doing some experiments and playing around with some things and talking to creative directors for other organizations. And in the midst of all of that, thought, there's really no way for people to discover some of these things I'm learning, because even though there are so many books right now about creating for a living and leading creative people and all of that, none of that really existed back then. I mean, there are very few people writing about that topic. And so in 2005, I launched a podcast. Which it's the funny thing is, even in 2005, I thought I was way late to the game on podcasting. I thought, oh boy, this thing, I'm way at the back end of this podcasting thing. We'll see if it even takes off, But started a podcast called The Accidental Creative. And the idea was to put yourself in positions where you experience creative accidents or accidental breakthroughs. So the fundamental premise of the show was, what are those dangerous intersections you can put yourself in to experience creative accidents more consistently, those moments of aha or those breakthroughs, and kind of put it out, forgot about it. Truthfully, I put some episodes out, kind of forgot about it. And then a month later was searching for podcasts to listen to. And I came across one called The Accidental Creative. That was one of the top podcasts on iTunes. And I thought, oh no, I stole someone else's name. I can't believe I just completely stole somebody else's brand. And it was my podcast that was one of the top podcasts on iTunes. And I didn't even know people were listening. I just put this thing out there as an experiment. And so I realized, okay, I think I've stepped into a real need in the marketplace. I think people are really trying to figure out this question, or the answer to this question of how do we be prolific, brilliant, and healthy. And so I formalized it a little more and sort of built a little business around it and realized, okay, I think it's time. And then, by the way, at the same time, I was getting invitations to go speak at companies like Mattel and Intel and at conferences and at South by Southwest and all these places to talk about some of the stuff that I was sharing on the podcast. And I thought, okay, there's something here. So I stepped out of my organizational role and I launched a business and Accidental Creative. And then had an offer shortly or within that, right around that same time frame, to write a book with Penguin Random House called The Accidental Creative. And that book came out in 2011. And since then I've written now 5 books in the last, 11 years. The Accidental Creative, Die Empty, Louder Than Words, Herding Tigers, and The Motivation Code, which is the latest book. And the podcast just crossed 10 million downloads this year, which is kind of exciting, an exciting milestone for us. So, so that's kind of how everything happened. It's funny because it's almost an ironic brand. And I've really struggled with the fact that accidental creative is like the opposite of what I really teach, which is you have to be purposeful. You have to build structure. You have to build rhythm. But it's funny because I was having a conversation with Richard Westendorf, who's the executive creative director at Landor here in Cincinnati. And he was sort of helping me think through the brand a little bit. And he's like, I think it's great. I think it's exactly what it needs to be. My friend Ricardo Crespo, who is the global creative chief at 20th Century Fox, he's like, I don't know what you mean. I think it's great. I think it's a great brand. It's very memorable. And so I'm like, okay, if Ricardo and Richard are both like,
board, yeah,
they're on board with this brand. I'm like, who am I, like little peon from Cincinnati, to question the brand? Like, I think I'll stay with it.
Oh, the books are great. I know that David Mills, our creative director, loves Herding Tigers. As a manager of a fantastic creative team, that book has done him so much good. And I love Die Empty because it teaches you how to live purposefully and mindfully and get the most out of everything that you do during your day. And it's incredible how much, after you read that, you look and you're like, I'm wasting so much time. Like my list of regrets is going to be two books long when I get to the end of my life. But you make sure that you go ahead and bring up all those points about the things that you need to be taking care of right away. But the one I want to get to is the motivation code. Tell me more about this and how the idea for the motivation code came around.
Yeah, so I never intended to write this book. In 2016, a friend of mine, Rod Penner, who had been a veteran of a management consulting firm for 20 years, and he'd done significant work around the world that is recognized by almost anybody who was listening to this, but I can't say that because I don't want to, say where he was working before. But he contacted me and he said, hey, I want you to take this motivation assessment I've been working on. And I don't know about you, but when I hear assessment, my eyes roll to the back of my head and I start thinking, great, I need another set of letters to attach to my name. But I knew Rod and I trusted him and I trusted his track record. So I took this assessment in 2016 and frankly, it blew me away. What I discovered blew me away. I learned things about myself that I'd always suspected, but I didn't have terms for. I discovered reasons why certain leadership roles had really meshed with how I'm wired and others had not meshed at all. I'd had a lot of difficulty, why I'd succeeded in some, tasks, had failed in other tasks, and generally just kind of gave me some language to describe some of the patterns of what drives me uniquely in life and in work. And so after taking the motivation code assessment, I thought I want to do something with this. I want to help Rod get this. And by the way, I found out he was working with a team of PhDs and researchers, and that this is based on over 50 years of research into motivation. Over 1 million achievement stories had been parsed to distill what became the motivation code assessment. And so I knew I wanted to help them get this work into the world. But the problem was I had just signed the contract for my book, Herding Tigers. And so, it was not a very good time for me to write another book on top of the one I was already writing. So really for the last 5 years, I was working on this book in the background and helping with the research and all of that with motivation code while I was writing Herding Tigers, knowing this was going to probably be the next thing that I was going to do. And so finally, Herding Tigers came out. We were able to write this book. This book came out just last October. And really what it is it describes a new way of thinking about motivation, a new way of understanding how motivation uniquely drives each individual. We tend to think about motivation as, basically just, hey, you just need to fire yourself up. You just need to, why are you not motivated? Why can't you just gear yourself up to do this? And what we don't realize is that every person responds differently to the stimulus in their environment. So we have historically thought about motivation as extrinsic and intrinsic. So extrinsic, and this is from the work of Dici and Ryan called self-determination theory. And what they discovered is that primarily people who are motivated intrinsically are motivated by three things: autonomy, mastery, and competence. Or autonomy, mastery, and purpose, but relatedness was the word that they used. I think relatedness rather than, I think Dan Pink uses the word purpose, but when he wrote the book Drive, but relatedness was the word that they used. But the thing that, and we often think, well, okay, we just need to tap into that intrinsic motivation. But the problem is the way I am intrinsically motivated is unique to me. there's a unique code that unlocks engagement, focus, drive in me that is different in me than it is in you. So for example, one of my top motivational themes is something we call meet the challenge. And in fact, this is my activator theme, meaning this is the thing that tends to get me involved in a project and also tends to get me in trouble sometimes. But if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Todd, I don't know if this is possible, but I'm already in, like I'm already there. You've already activated my motivation, my meet the challenge motivation. Because I know that about myself, I am able to meter how I selectively take engagements or how I engage in certain kinds of work, because I know if I know I need to do this work, like let's say I know I need to do my taxes right now, which actually is something I do need to do right now. But there's something else that feels maybe a little bit more imminently challenging, something I can tackle quickly in like 15 minutes and I can just kind of do it and get it out of the way. And it feels challenging in the moment. All day long, I'm going to default to doing that thing that feels challenging because that's how I'm naturally wired, even at the expense of not getting something else done, right?
Yeah.
So because I know that, I'm able to structure my life and my work and my days in such a way that I'm bringing my motivation to my work in a way that's productive and helpful, not in a way that could potentially distract me from other things I need to be doing. So once you understand your motivation code, you understand not only the positive sides of those motivations, but also potentially the shadow sides of those motivations and ways that they could draw you into activity that's detrimental to what you're really trying to do.
This is awesome because I just got done doing a leadership course where we talked a lot about motivation and how to motivate a team, basically. I actually, if you didn't know, I work under Dave Mills, so he's talked a lot about you, dropped your name all the time. And so this idea of like figuring out how to motivate people or motivate yourself is something we covered a lot. So I'm curious. I haven't read the book and I'm interested in it, of course, but I'm trying to figure out what exactly do you cover? In my courses, we talked about figuring out who the person is that you're trying to motivate, and then you have to sort of adapt to approach that person. Is this more internally focused, or is this the book also cover external forces as well?
Yeah, so it's so the way that we've traditionally thought about motivation is intrinsic, extrinsic, right? What has come out in the research in recent years is that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation modify one another. So my unique blend of motivations is going to cause me to respond to some kind of stimulus. Let's say a pay raise. So let's say that Susan and Austin and I are all getting a pay raise in the organization. Congratulations, by the way. We all just got a pay raise. For let's say that and I don't know anything about your motivations, right? So let's say that for you, Austin, that is engaging to you, that pay raise. You like that, you like the money, but really what's engaging to you is that pay raise means that you're being invited to be a part maybe of a team that is a high functioning team that accompanies that pay raise because you're getting promoted. And because you're wired to collaborate, that's something that excites you. You're really more excited long-term. You'll be more engaged long-term, not because of the temporary ping of the pay raise, but because you're being invited to be a part of a high-functioning team. Let's say that, for example, Susan, one of your core motivations is Excel. Okay. So to you, maybe it's not so much being invited into a team. Maybe it's not so much the pay raise itself, or even the words of encouragement from your manager that come with that pay raise. It's more about the fact that you showed yourself that you can excel, that you were the best of the best and you got a pay raise because you excelled over everybody else, right? For me, maybe one of my core motivations is gain ownership, which means what I really want is more responsibility. I want to be over more things. I want to have more ownership of dynamics going on in the organization. Maybe this pay raise comes with more responsibility. So we each got a pay raise, but the reason that pay raise meant something to us, or the reason it activated us, was different depending on how we're wired. And so again, that's why understanding the motivations of the people on your team is really important. Because if I know that Susan is wired by Excel, but all I'm doing is just encouraging her with words all day long, but I'm not really showing her how she's standing out from everybody else, she's only going to feel good if I tell her, by the way, you're doing better than Austin. Right? I mean, not that I would say it that way, but like she's only going to feel good if she knows in her mind that she is excelling for somebody in her position, that she's, going above and beyond what would be expected of somebody in her position. That's what's going to engage her. That's what's going to keep her deeply invested in the process. Then as her manager, I can use that, right, to communicate to her in a way that will keep her motivated. For me, I mentioned Meet the Challenge is one of mine. You need to be giving me regular challenges, small, discrete challenges that I can tackle, or showing me how to break up my work in a way that I can meet the challenge every day. Or another one of mine is influence behavior. So I want to know that what I'm saying and doing is influencing you in some way. So I want you to repeat back words to me that I have said, because that shows me that I have influenced your thinking in some way. So if you were managing me, you would want to say, hey, Todd, I just want to let you know that thing you said in the meeting last week really made me think. It really made me change my mind about XYZ project that we're working on. Thanks for saying that. That really made a big difference. That'll keep me going for weeks because I know I influenced your behavior in some way, right? So once you know that about the person on your team, you have to be careful not to use it in a manipulative way, but you can use it in a way that is genuinely about helping that person be engaged and be deeply connected to the work that's in front of them in a way that's unique from their peers.
Oh yeah, bringing up the managers is a really good point too, because I think sometimes managers are like, my team is motivated by this, so this is what they want in order to excel. If you want them to meet this strategic goal, you should do this for them. But sometimes that's not always true. A manager might think that, that might be the way the manager is motivated, or the way that top performer in that team is motivated. But what really motivates them? Like, are they really getting what they want? So tell me about how an entire company can use this. Are you guys developing a way that an entire company can organize the motivations or the M codes that they all have?
Yeah, so we are. So right now we have the Motivation Code Assessment, which is at motivationcode.com. And that's something that any individual can take and learn more about what it is that drives them. And obviously the book goes even deeper into that as well. And explains each of those. There are 6 motivational families we've uncovered and 27 unique motivational themes that we've uncovered as part of the all of the research that's been going on, again, for over 50 years into what drives people. But we're also developing something we're calling the M-Code Matrix, which is a platform to allow managers and teams to understand what drives each other. So, basically helps people not only understand what drives them, but how often they're activating those motivations in their day-to-day work, and as a measure of engagement, but also as a way for the manager to have more meaningful conversations with the people on the team about those motivations and about how to leverage those motivations more consistently in their day-to-day work. And, I think some people who maybe are motivated in certain ways think, well, shouldn't you just be motivated? I mean, we're paying you to do a job. Shouldn't you just, part of being a professional is just figuring out how to be motivated? And yeah, that's true. That's totally true. Listen, as professionals, we do just need to figure out how to muster up the energy to do our work. That's part of what it is to be a professional. And at the same time, just because you have somebody's head and you have their effort doesn't mean you have their heart, right? And there isn't a manager alive or an organization alive that doesn't want to capture the heart and the energy and the discretionary energy of the people on their team. And this is really what we're talking about. We're talking about people bringing discretionary energy to their work. It's one thing to bring whatever energy is necessary to get the job done. It's another thing when you're bringing discretionary energy because the work itself is animating engagement in you. That's when organizations become great, is when people are so attached to the work because it's uniquely motivating them that they're bringing more than their competitive organizations in the marketplace because the workforce is so deeply engaged. And so that's what we're trying to do, is help people figure out how to bring their motivations to their work instead of waiting for their work to motivate them. And that makes all the difference.
I think that's something we talked about a lot here at Touchstone, is taking ownership of the projects, having that buy-in, having that motivation to just own it and make it yours. For me, it's a big thing. It's a hard thing for me too. I'm a photographer here. So letting go of projects is the hardest thing for me to do because I love doing them. I love being in that creative zone, but being able to sort of work with my coworkers and have them take over what I'm doing, that's been the challenge for me to sort of step up. And I'm working on bigger projects now and trying to get more motivated about them. But each day I still fall back to those smaller projects, those things I'm comfortable with and I know I'm successful at. It does still scare me to take on bigger projects because I'm I haven't done enough of them to be confident in them. And so I think something like this, figuring out, okay, well, what will motivate my coworker to take on this project for me? That's something I think is a challenge for any creative or any employee.
Oh, for sure. And by the way, that control versus influence dynamic is so common among any managers of any organization. Part of your job, once you become a manager, once you become a leader within an organization, your job's not to do the work, your job is to lead the work, right? But so much of our career is defined by how well we control the work, how great of an executor we are of the work. But at some point, it's no longer your job to do it. It's your job to lead others who are doing it. And one of the problems in organizations is that people come along and they say, hey, you know what? You're really great at, you know what, Austin, you're really great at making photos. You know what you should do? You should lead other people who are making photos. Well, maybe in your case, that's absolutely right, but not in everybody's case, right? Like sometimes you're just really good at executing, but there's a very different skill set required to manage to lead. And one of those skills is the ability to lead by influence, not lead by control. So to establish expectations, parameters, and teach people how to do the work without stepping in and telling them what to do. That's a very difficult thing to do as a manager. So you're not alone. I encounter people every day in the marketplace who are sort of in that same place where it's like, I know I need to be up here in terms of what I'm thinking about, but really I'm drawn down here. I'm drawn down to the ground level because that's what I'm so used to and it's what I love to do, right? It's a really difficult thing. And the reality is most of us are makagers, right? We're not managers or makers. We're kind of makagers. We're kind of in between, which is the reality. But it's a difficult dynamic for sure.
Now, there's one thing you mentioned that I kind of want to rewind and hit on, and that is the staying power of doing one of these assessments and keeping it relevant on an ongoing basis. Like some of us might take a company-wide assessment for everybody, and we all have that aha moment where we're like, oh, okay, now I understand how to get Austin to do this thing for me, and I understand what's going to make me more motivated and why I work the way I do. But you talked about an ongoing check-in or pulse survey on a regular basis to kind of see how this is still relevant or still playing out. Will you revisit that and tell us a little bit more about how we can make this work for us on an ongoing basis and not just once and forget about it?
Yeah, well, we lose sight. It's just like anything else. We gain awareness and understanding, and when that happens, often we experience disproportionate results on the other side of it. And that's fantastic. The problem is that very quickly wears off, right? In the midst of our work, we forget that breakthrough led to some sort of substantial improvement in performance or engagement. And so it really is about establishing practices, rhythms, disciplines in your life to continue to position yourself in such a way that you're activating those core motivations. I think a lot of times managers forget, and I am guilty of this. I'm sure many people listening to this are guilty as well. We forget that companies are made up of human beings who are very complex individuals who have experiences and feelings, and their lives aren't static, and we're all going through different things. And so what works one time with someone as a methodology may not work the next time with that person. Like we tend to often think about our work in terms of snapshot productivity instead of interval productivity, right? So instead of looking at seasons, we tend to look at moments in time. And that's not always very useful to us. Well, we need to look at our trends and seasons. Well, what Motivation Code does is it helps us look at how often people are activating their motivations over a period of time, how often they report that they're operating in those core motivations, which, by the way, has correlation to all kinds of things we discovered, like experiencing flow state. Flow state being that moment where you're to simplify it, where you're lost in your work, right? Where you're doing work that is, and many people report they're doing the best work of their life when they're in flow state because you're kind of lost in the problem solving aspect of the work. What we do is we measure for people how often they're activating those core motivations, which is then a measure often of engagement, a flow of all of these other things. And for managers, that's really useful information, because if you're seeing that somebody's productivity is dropping off, and you also see, by the way, that they're not operating consistently in those core motivations, we're going to give you specific coaching advice to help you activate those core motivations more often. So it's not just, hey, you should collaborate more, but it's, hey, let's talk about what's been going on over the last couple of months with regard to your interactions with your team. And there are specific questions that we ask to help people get to why is it that you're not activating that collaborate motivation, or why is it you're not feeling challenged, you're not activating that meet the challenge motivation, or why is it you're not feeling like you're a key contributor right now in the organization. Let's address that, and let's figure out a way that we can maybe structure your work so that you're activating those motivations more consistently. So we have a more engaged workplace, right? So that we have people bringing more discretionary energy to what they do. And overall, if you get the process right, the product is going to take care of itself. If you get the people in the process in the right place, you get the process right, then the product is going to take care of itself in the end. We often start with the product and work our way backward, but that's not the right way to think of it. And so that's what's exciting to me, is that we're really helping people figure out how to engage in the process in a way that's more consistent with who they are, and in a way that's going to, in the end, is going to provide a better product for companies, which is going to impact the bottom line. So that's very exciting.
Oh man, it is. I want to know what my motivation code is.
Yeah.
So if our listeners are feeling the same way and they're like, where can I find out? Where can I nail this down for myself to share for others? Where do they go? Where can they go for more information?
So you can go to motivationcode.com. That is the site where our company Pruvio, that is responsible for Motivation Code. It's where we host all of our resources. Also in the book, there is a link. So if you have a copy of the book, there's a link to a version of the assessment as well that you can take, that will give you your top 3 motivations. The assessment at motivationcode.com gives you all 27 and a fancy report and a bunch of videos and all kinds of stuff along with that as well.
This is so exciting to me. I love the idea of an entire company taking a look inward, assessing their motivations, not just who they are, not just putting a label on themselves and saying, this is the way I act, this is the reason I am the way I am, but taking it a step further and saying, this is what motivates me to do my best work, and this is how I can get the most out of myself, the most out of my team. That just puts so much more coal in the engine in the train analogy he used. I seriously cannot wait to find out what my motivation code is.
Oh yeah.
I think it's awesome.
I think it's such an interesting way to focus on, okay, instead of having them do a bunch of projects and then figuring out which ones they like, to just take a second and figure out what actually motivates them and what will keep them engaged. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been starting a project and I am not motivated to complete it, and it's the hardest thing to finish. It is. I told my sister this. We'll do videos together. If something goes wrong, or if there's one little thing that isn't what I like, it takes me the longest time to finish it because I'm not voted.
That one little thing, and it could be done.
Yeah, it's something where from the get-go, if I knew that was going to happen, it wouldn't bother me. Mm-hmm. But after that, I'm like, oh man, I lose all motivation. And so how to like re-energize yourself to complete it. Mm-hmm. As a creative, that is sometimes the hardest part, is just getting into that zone, that flow state, as Todd was talking about, of getting it done, going through stuff and being able to complete projects quickly and effectively and produce some of the best work of your life. I think that to me is like, if I can get there as often as possible, mm-hmm. that's what I would want to have. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah. The part I think that is most valuable to what they're doing for this the platform for companies is they are building in a way to keep these results relevant. Because you get all excited when an entire company, like we said, when an entire company does a test and then a year later we're like, yeah, I've got the results taped to the back of my office door, but I couldn't even tell you what my results were. But this way they build in quizzes and pulse surveys that keep it relevant and say, are you still being activated in this way? If you keep up with employees like that and find that they're still engaged, they never get to the point where they're looking for another job. Yep. They're in that flow state constantly and they are churning out the awesome work. So I'm just tickled. I'm just so excited. So if you want to know more, you can get a hold of Todd Henry's team through the motivationcode.com, right? Yep. Awesome. I just love it. And if you want to know more about Touchstone, you can go to tmgideas.com. You can search for TMG Ideas on Facebook. And if you want to know what's happening behind the scenes with the culture here at Touchstone, you can go to Touchstone Life on Instagram.
And if you want to take a second, head over to YouTube and leave us a comment down in the comment section below. Let us know who you want us to talk to. We love to talk to visionaries about their brands and what they do and how they became the person they are. And we want to hear from them. So let us know. Or if you have any other comments, leave them down there.
Yeah, if you've taken the motivation code, we want to hear what your motivations are. I love it. I got to know that.
Oh yeah, I want to know mine right now. We'll probably after we're done filming, we'll probably go and take it.
Yes.
'Cause we're both those type of people. We love to know that about ourselves.
Assessments. I love it. Give me all the assessments.
But that's about it. Thanks for listening to
Create, Inspire, Repeat.